Okay, so maybe I've been putting off making this video for a little too long. Well, over the last couple of months, I've been exploring and watching through the catalogue of Dragon Ball films, most of which I've never seen. I started out by watching the most recommended by you guys, then I tackled the second most recommended, and then I forced myself through the least popular among them. But today I'm going to be forcing myself through what I expect to be the worst session of movie watching I've ever experienced. Why do I think this? Well, the movies that receive the most and least votes do so for a reason. People either hate them or love them. Either way, there's something to be gained either through admiration or at the very least a bit of humor poking fun at it. But when something is in the middle, it can be very boring. So, I have 5 more left to cover. Well, technically I have 6, but I don't want to watch another old Dragon Ball movie that recaps moments around early tournament arcs. Tao does shoot Arale with a Dodon Ray though. Anyway, we have 5 movies left, and those films are Tree of Might, Lord Slug, The Return of Cooler, Super Android 13, and Broly's Second Coming. I haven't seen any of these films, and to kick things off, we're diving straight into The Tree of Might. Okay, so not only have I never seen this film, but I also have no idea what it's even about. I knew it had Turles in it, but I had no idea what part he even played. And so the story itself begins with a pod landing on Earth while the gang, excluding Goku, is camping in the forest. This forest suddenly bursts into flames. Some of the colors and visuals with Gohan and Krillin tackling the burning woodland are actually very pretty. With the inferno eventually having come under control, the forest itself is left in ashes, leaving all the native creatures without a place to live. And thus the quest for the Dragon Balls begins. Cue theme music. And so naturally, this film is pretty much a quest to find all 7 Dragon Ball. Oh wait, no, it's not. The title sequence ends and Shenron is here. Ooh, and it's that shot from the old opening on Toonami. The vast majority of the first 15 minutes isn't important, and Icarus for the most part gets way too much screen time that culminates in what is eventually a throwaway scene towards the end. Other than that, the last 75% of the film is actually handled really well. If you're a fan of Goku wrecking shop, then you'll love the middle bit that boasts some of the best animation this era of Dragon Ball has to offer. Seriously, it's utterly gorgeous. Additionally, and somewhat surprisingly, there's a pretty hefty environmental message throughout that works for the most part. The Z Warriors get punched, and Turles is actually much better and much more fun to watch in this movie than I anticipated. I like the concept of the tree that sucks the life out of the planet. It makes for a great visual and a fitting way to cap off the film with a bang. Using the life energy of the tree itself against Turles and the tree was a clever idea and one I didn't see coming. The film has its drawbacks like the first 15 minutes and King Kai only appearing to facilitate exposition dumps, but the vast majority of the film is actually quite fun. Next. This film I haven't seen, but I did watch the Team 4-Star version and it's pretty much the same story for the most part, all the while being less than half the runtime. How is this possible? Well, the movie just sort of drags its feet with the forward progression of the story a bit here and there. And everywhere. There are some truly fun action sequences in the first half with Gohan, Krillin, Piccolo, and even Roshi. But in order to get to those moments, there's tons of unnecessary talking, standing around, doing nothing, and action with no resolution. The story so far is pretty sound and perfectly serviceable, but the material is better suited to a 30-minute special than a 45-minute feature. The big Getty star is the most MacGuffin thing I've heard in all of Dragon Ball so far. I don't care about it even slightly, and it comes out of nowhere to make the plot possible. The great aspects of this film are clear as day. Vegeta's save for Goku during the initial phase of the Cooler fight is a highlight for certain. However, how he got to the planet that was made to be intentionally difficult to find is left unexplained, which always bothered me. And that's pretty much this movie in a nutshell. Things sort of happen that wouldn't normally make sense just to facilitate a cool shot, animation sequence, or reveal. And there are some awesome shots in this film, some of my favorites in fact. A wounded Goku and Vegeta standing defiantly against an army of Coolers is a sweet shot, and it's one Toyotaro took inspiration from for his manga during the Goku Black arc. I would imagine those of you that enjoy Dragon Ball for the fights and not the story will thoroughly enjoy this. And even those of you that like the banter between Vegeta and Goku have something to enjoy here. As for the story, it's pretty unremarkable overall, with an ending that screams, "We didn't know how to end this, so Goku and Vegeta just get super strong and win inexplicably." And they even had senzu beans. What? I watched these movies one after the other, and at this stage in watching these films, I became incredibly jaded. Super jaded. Not necessarily because these movies are doing anything terribly wrong, but because they are all doing the same for the most part. All of them follow this basic structure. Cold open with the gang enjoying normal things, injecting bits of comedy. The bad guy shows up and they fight for the vast majority with the goal of stopping them. They keep fighting until they fail. Then Goku pulls through at the end to win the day inexplicably. The story isn't necessarily there to be interesting or captivating, but to act as a vehicle for the action to take place. It's action over story, and honestly, I'm sick of it. Now, this film has some great visuals. The character designs are quirky, and I really like how they reanimated Android 17 eliminating Dr. Gero at the very beginning. But when you catch on to how these films are structured, which isn't difficult, they become very slow and boring to watch. There's no emotional through line to keep tabs with and to explore. It's punch punch, shout shout, repeat until over. Dragon Ball sort of has this reputation for being the punch kick shout anime, and while the action is a large part of the series, it's by no means ever been the focus of it. The action happens, but the story has always been first. They tell a story through the fighting. They don't just have a story so that they can fight. And that is the key difference. The Super Android 13 film itself has terrific backgrounds and colors going its way, and the art from this era is always reliable. But the story has nothing to say. It might as well be a sequence of clips that on their own look great and are cool, but offer nothing else. Once again, because the story has no emotional through line, it has to figure out a way for Goku to super punch the bad guy away at the end. That really screams Deus Ex Machina. From a visual front, it's up there with the standard classic Dragon Ball has always enjoyed. But in terms of story, it offers nothing. Please Lord, let this next one have a story. I immediately hate it. This Gohan whistling thing makes me so uncomfortable. For some reason, more so than it does Piccolo. The tune is unbearable to me. Moving swiftly on, this is another one of those Dragon Ball movies I have no idea about or what the story even is. So a massive comet expected to crash on Earth explodes near it instead, releasing a spaceship that lands on the planet. Within this ship, you guessed it, is none other than the titular Lord Slug and his henchmen looking to, you guessed it, gather the Earth's Dragon Balls to, you guessed it, grant Lord Slug immortality. Oh wait, no. He wants to be young. Sort of a waste, but yeah, whatever. It's your wish. His primary goal for Earth is to convert it into a ship or vehicle to cruise across the universe or something. What's important is that he's doing bad things to the Earth, and boy howdy does Goku and co want to stop him. Some of the henchmen Piccolo and Gohan face have some pretty interesting and somewhat gross abilities, so that's always fun. Nevertheless, Goku shows up to make the save for Piccolo and Gohan that leads to the henchmen's ultimate defeat in a style that is very similar to how he arrived and defeated the Ginyu Force on Namek. Definitely not a coincidence. Most of these films do these things like this. And with the henchmen out of the way, it's time for the main course. It's Slug time. The fight, honestly, early on is very standard. Krillin gets decked in one punch and Goku takes the beating for the bones of 10 minutes until this happens. Goku ends up doing this sort of Super Saiyan but not really kind of thing. It's a really cool scene and demonstration of the form, except the hair is the wrong color. I don't know enough about the scene and its production, but I've heard that this was a mistake by the art department and this was supposed to be the first Super Saiyan demonstration but fell short as a result of the color mishap. This could be untrue. I am by no means an official source. I haven't fact checked this, but that's just something that I've heard. It's a rumor. Or maybe it's true, I don't know. Regardless, it turns out that Slug is a Namekian, which explains why he knows about the Dragon Balls and he begins to grow in size, much like Piccolo did during the Tenkaichi Budokai. There's some interesting shots of Goku running and evading the giant hands of Slug, with some interesting action sequences from Piccolo himself also. They then tank the entire film by making it such that Gohan's whistling is the kryptonite to the Namekian people. Piccolo rips his ears off and Gohan weakens Slug through his terrible whistling. Now, having been weakened, Goku gives Lord Slug the old wham bam thank you ma'am, sending him away with a spirit bomb. Overall, the movie is okay. It's very formulaic with some cool visual moments. The ending is honestly terrible due to there being primarily no emotional through line. Shocking, I know. And now it's time for that movie I've been dreading to review this entire time. Broly Second Coming is the most bonkers film I've ever seen released for Dragon Ball, bar none. And I've seen Hitler resurrected from the dead while Goku and Vegeta try to fix the plumbing in Otherworld. At the end of the first Broly film, we are expected to believe that not only did Broly land in ice, or crystal, that regardless of what it is, should have no oxygen for him to breathe and thus should have killed him there and then. But that's not where this crazy train of coincidence ends. He also landed on Earth, of all places, coincidentally residing in the lake that also happens to be where a beast terrorizes a small village in the middle of nowhere. A place that Videl, Goten, and Trunks happen to find themselves sitting on top of, all the while managing to make the only noise that could wake up this comatose Broly. This is the single most tragic opening I've ever seen in my life, and then this happens. What is happening? What is happening in this movie? It's like a funhouse mirror. Nothing is the way that you think it should be. I like that Videl has a large role to play in this film, but she hasn't been set up to survive a single shot from the character that did this to Vegeta in the last one. Gohan senses a disturbance in the forest and begins racing towards the location of all the action, arriving just in the nick of time to make the save on Goten and Trunks. And this is honestly the best part of the film for me. Seeing Gohan acting assertively and assuming responsibility for everyone taking the lead against Broly, but truly that's not nearly enough to make this even a passable film for me. Suffering similar issues other films in this series have had to an absurd degree. This film takes so many liberties with its storytelling in order to exclusively create snapshot moments that are cool in isolation, but when you stop to think about it, makes zero sense. For instance, this shot of Goten, Gohan, and Goku firing a family Kamehameha was awesome. It's a shot that is shared throughout the internet and it's one I am very familiar with. Now, having seen it, I can't help but laugh at it. The Dragon Balls fall out of a bag, Shenron summons himself, and Goku is wished back by what is later explained as the dragon himself helping out Goku. I've heard people say that Goten makes the wish, but he really doesn't. He doesn't say a single word. Any monologue that happens with Goten happens in his head, and you can't make a wish with what you're thinking. Otherwise, what would have been the point of the very first wish in all of Dragon Ball where Oolong wished for panties? I'm sure no one else was thinking that. It's always been very clearly a first come first serve audible request to the dragon from you, the person making the wish. And so, as Goku makes his way up to his two sons, I am laughing at how utterly ridiculous this entire thing is. Why not have Videl use the balls? She was the one that wanted to see them in action in the first place, and it would have given her a unique and worthwhile use in the film. What in the world were they thinking? Between this and BoJack Unbound's surprise Goku save, the endings these films receive are some of the worst Deus Ex Machina finishes I have ever sat through. This movie had some great ideas for visuals, but cared less about the story than pretty much all of the others. Look, I love Dragon Ball's big moments as much as the next guy. My favorite happens to be, right now, the Kaioken x20 on Namek. But that moment is so great because of everything that went into making it what it was. In isolation, as a vapid, meaningless action sequence, it loses a ton of its luster for me. And the same can be said for why the Gohan Super Saiyan 2 transformation was so successful. It's not just successful because it looks cool, it's successful because of what it means. It meant something. This Broly film didn't pay enough attention or give enough care to what ultimately became a very bad script. A script that could be made infinitely better with a few minor changes here and there, without yet again relying on the old reliable, or as Broly might put it, Kakarot, 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 Kakarot. My journey through these films have been much more enjoyable than what this video might have led you to believe. There were some pleasant surprises earlier in this series, but if I'm being perfectly honest, the vast majority followed the exact same formulaic structure that honestly bores me to death. And don't get me wrong, I'm by no means saying that you can't enjoy these. As I said earlier, if you're just in this for the action, it's there. Just don't expect anything in the realm of story for the vast majority of these. I've made a list of these films from best to worst as my personal ranking and posted it on my Twitter if you want to check that out, and maybe give me a follow. I'm on there at TotallyNotMark. Lots of the concepts I employ for videos come from your input on Twitter, and make sure to subscribe for more videos on YouTube too. But that'll do it for this week. Thank you all so much for watching.